Files released last year showed pictures of Jeffrey Epstein hanging out with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, but the latest batch reveals a far more personal relationship between these two men. In hundreds of text messages and emails between them, their relationship and close friendship is apparent, including in this text exchange from July 6, 2019. In those messages, Bannon and Epstein discuss getting together the following day, but when Bannon proposes a time, Epstein abruptly calls off their plans, writing, quote, "all canceled." Epstein had been arrested by federal authorities for sex trafficking minors. Bannon first met Epstein after the 2016 election, according to journalist Michael Wolff in his 2019 book, Siege: Trump Under Fire. Wolff wrote that Bannon, the architect of Trump's improbable win, told Epstein, quote, "You were the one person I was truly afraid of coming forward during the campaign." Epstein grew deeply invested in Bannon's attempts to spread right-wing populism all over the globe, offering contacts, advice, and access to his plane. Bannon, meanwhile, seemed eager to take advantage of his new friends. In July 2018, he asked him in a text message, quote, "Do you know anyone in Europe that wants to control the European Parliament and with it the EU?" At times, Epstein and Bannon reflected on their consequential partnership. Like when they had overlapping interests in Israel, Epstein wrote to Bannon, quote, "Now you can understand why Trump wakes up in the middle of the night sweating when he hears you and I are friends." Before publishing this story, I reached out to Steve Bannon for comment, and he did not respond.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this first time I'm doing this. All right, here's the deal. First of all, here's me. Whoa, fucking big. And I'm pink. Wow. Okay. And I've got a blemish, and my fucking desk is shaky as hell for some reason. That's crazy. Okay, let me see if I can get this to stabilize some. Oh no, you saw behind the fucking curtain. Oh no, it's just a green screen. I'm not really on the Mars depicted in the Watchmen graphic novel, guys. I apologize for deceiving you. That's not where I am. I'm actually just in a room. This is a green screen. I'm sorry. I just want to be completely, upfront about this. Okay. So I don't like this camera angle or anything about it. I gotta work with this shit. You know what? I'll keep the camera off right now because it's gonna distract me. Okay, so if you watched yesterday's stream and you saw the very end of it, basically, most of it we were talking about Avengers Doomsday trailer, but then we got into something a bit different than that. I kind of started, I basically contained myself as long as I could have. If you guys had any idea how much I've tipped my hand toward what content I'm planning on doing in the future, like I basically have almost never been able to hold on to something for very long. If I'm excited about it, if I'm excited about something I'm doing, I'm typically just going to burst and say the shit. I, however, am very proud of myself for how long I've kept what I talked about yesterday at the end of the stream under wraps for the most part. Because what it started as was something that I did announce. I even put a little trailer out for it, which was going to be the final actual fandom video. And I, had started working on that, and I was taking my time because I wanted it to be kind of the final, statement on the whole, the 6 years of content. Where I was just going to be, lay out everything essentially. And then something started happening that kind of made it, I didn't realize at first that it made it impossible to do it in the way that I was doing it. It took me a while to figure it out. That was the Epstein files being released. Not all of them, about half of them apparently. But what was in that half was quite substantial and kind of changed everything about how I understood, how we understood. The people in general, the culture wars, so to speak, which is a term that I've never liked because I didn't think it was a culture war. I just never felt that was accurate because of the fact that I was not fighting a culture war necessarily. I was just like, I felt like most people that are fans of, the stuff we're fans of and whatnot. For instance, Marvel, perfect example of something that's always been quote unquote woke, though I would never have described it as that. It's always been liberal, you know what I mean? But then you started having these accusations being made about it and everything that are just not accurate and in fact deceptive in many cases. And that those same people that are making those claims are calling it a culture war. And that always read is kind of sus to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you guys so insistent on creating a culture war that is really just you misrepresenting the stuff that you're constantly talking about, right? Like, it's almost, after a while, I realized there's no way that most of these guys can be so just factually wrong and not realize it. That's why I started calling them grifters, because they know that they're lying in most cases. But so what I started talking about last night with Morgan on was the project that I've been kind of, I retooled the Final AF video into something that now I'm thinking is going to be a series. And it's going to be, ironically, because it was going to be the last time that I kind of zeroed in on the Chud grift, it's actually going to maybe consequently be the most, you know, I hesitate to call my own work important. And there's also a lot of this work that was already done for me. So I'm kind of just, in many cases, I'm just collating information that's already been, you know, people worked really hard to bring us. And a lot of it is, tragically, information that we only have because there were countless victims of Epstein and who have still not seen justice, had justice done to him or any of the other people. I mean, I guess he had some version of justice, but nonetheless, that's the reason we know about any of this stuff. Somebody said on stream yesterday when I was talking about it, they said that they think that this stuff that I'm talking about, it was just the tip of the iceberg. And I think that that's incorrect. I think the stuff that I'm going to be focusing on in the series is actually the iceberg. And the reason I think that is because we were not supposed to find out about this stuff. This is not stuff that like the tip of the iceberg would have been, you know, oh, there seems to be some kind of tangential connections between, this person and this person, but we don't really know. But like now we can see the details. We see the details. We know we can look at financial disclosures, transactions. We can look at timelines. We can look at private fucking messages, you know, made by these billionaires who, with explicit intent on guiding society in whatever fucking weird direction they've decided they want to go, right? I'm not modest. It's not that I'm modest. It's that I don't think that everybody, I doubt that my coverage is going to get the attention that it deserves, if considering the information I'm going to be conveying. And I'm starting that today with just a little bit, just a little taste. And I realize the only way I can do this is in a series, basically. And I started to record it. My initial goal today was to record the first episode of this series, not stream it, record it. And then a funny thing happened. And I've seen this has happened a little bit before, but like because I've been live streaming so much for so long now, when I sit down with because I use StreamYard to record as well, just the only difference is I don't send it live, right? I can just record it. When I start trying to present information, I freeze up. And I think it's because I've gotten so used to, I think of, I guess an abstract kind of way. I realize I'm talking to an audience. I think of you as people that I'm communicating to. And when I'm just not communicating to people, and I'm just, I know even though it will eventually be communicated to you, but when I'm just like in the moment, I'm like, it feels really performative. And I don't like that. I don't like feeling like I'm performing. It's maybe an autism thing. But when I know that there's actual human beings on the other end and you're listening, I get into it. I may get nervous. I may get anxious and stuff like that. It's true that happens, but I get excited. It's about presenting the information and I want to do a good job. And I'm like, also there's the element of wanting to entertain to a degree. You have to kind of want to do that. So that keeps me on my toes and it keeps me constantly looking for a way to, keep the stream going. The downside of that is I can lose focus really easily, and I do. But with this specific series, I'm going to ask y'all to, bear with me and try not to ask me distracting questions. I probably won't be looking at chat very much once I get started here. I know, yeah, I only put it on my channel because this is probably going to go private after I'm done. And then it might just be, you might not see it again until my goal was to record several episodes, I suppose, of this series before I ever put anything out. And I'm still kind of going to do that, except it's going to be streamed, record it that way. And then when I'm done, make it private and then eventually edit it down once I have several episodes ready to go. And those will probably be put on a different channel. I'm not sure yet. I appreciate that, man. That's all, like, sincerely knowing that I've helped one person ever is worth it. And I happen to know that it's been a few more than that. So, all right. So what we're going to look at today is a really easy way to, so if you've caught any of the stuff that JD Vance was saying on Joe Rogan last week, let me know if you saw any of that stuff. It's really notable the conflicts of interest that he has, and I don't mean in like the financial sense necessarily, just in a narrative sense. It's a lot. Like, I would almost feel bad for JD Vance if I felt bad for JD Vance at all, but I don't. Let me find this thing here. So some of the stuff that he was saying on Joe Rogan's podcast was very obviously not something to be taken very seriously. But let me see. The hell did I do with that shit? Okay, well, we'll look at that for, well, instead of we're going to look at some of what JD Vance said, and then we're going to look back at something another person said another time. But you know what? Before we get to that, I do have a couple other things in this topic that I want to look at, just to kind of set the stage of, I want you guys to understand how disingenuous, how really kind of sinister Peter Thiel is. If you haven't figured it out yet, if you haven't seen enough from him to understand that, I don't know what to tell you, but the guy is kind of a fucking evil prick. Here's this.
For you, one of the most chilling clips I've ever heard. And just hold on and trust me, because it's not that chilling until you realize what it means.
The basic idea was that we could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
That's tech billionaire and Republican megadonor Peter Thiel speaking at a Libertopia, a libertarian conference in 2010. He's basically saying that his political ideology is so unappealing that it'll never win elections. And that's one thing he's right about, because he's railed against women having the right to vote, complained so much about diversity, and written some really disgusting stuff about sexual assault and consent. But he knows that he can use technology as a unilateral alternative to politics, and that should really freak you out. Thiel is one of the co-founders and biggest investors in Palantir, a CIA-funded technology company that has contracts across the government for their data software. Here's their CFO speaking a few years ago.
We continue to advance our mission of becoming the US government's central operating system as we extend our footprint across defense, healthcare, and civilian agencies.
And while both President Obama and Biden did sign Palantir contracts, President Trump is taking it way further. There are new contracts with ICE, something literally called Immigration OS, and the IRS. So 15 years ago, Peter Thiel, like the supervillain in a movie explaining his plan to the hero, admitted that he can use technology to get his ideas across when they're unpopular, completely subverting democracy. And today, one of his technology companies is gaining more and more power within the government, building the very systems our government relies on. And oh yeah, this is the CEO.
The central risk to Palantir and America and the world is a regressive way of thinking that is corrupting and corroding our institutions, that calls itself progressive, but actually, and is called woke, but is actually a form of a thin pagan religion.
If you're a progressive, if you have progressive values, meaning you just, care about other people, the CEO of the company building America's technological back end thinks of you as the central risk. He thinks of you as the enemy. Are these the people you want running the systems you rely on, or worse, the systems that surveil you?
Yeah, so there's that. kind of alarming but you know, I'll say thank you at least for at one point being so open and honest. But you know, at that point he was very accustomed to libertarians not getting any attention, so I think he thought that he could say that, you know, without yeah. But so I'm currently trying to find, I don't know how I've misplaced it, this goddamn video of you know, I'll find it while we look at this. So here is Brian Tyler Cohen, generally not somebody that I, you know, follow on a regular basis or anything, but I am subscribed to him. And it is valid, I believe, to take some stuff from him now and then, although I recognize he is straight up just up in the pocket of the Democratic Party.
I have seen, and I've looked at most of the files, is that there just wasn't dispositive evidence. And if that dispositive evidence ever existed, it was probably destroyed after 2006, 2007. Now, like, again, in our defense, yes, was there some, you know, bitching and moaning, and was there some back and forth? Yes. But we eventually collected 6 million documents as part of the effort. The president, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke. He absolutely could have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, nope, we're going to release these files. He thought, you know, he was annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, like, do I think there is any, I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence.
Doing things bad. This is our vice president, man. This is how he speaks. He was annoyed. The Democrats said he was doing things bad. He's doing things bad. He's doing bad things.
That the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing with minors, ever.
So Vance says, quote, "I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that Trump ever engaged in wrongdoing." And he's talking about the Epstein files. And that's all well and good. But if there's no evidence that would incriminate Trump, or frankly anyone else, then why not just release the files? Why are you holding on to 3 million documents? What is it for? And if there's, quote, "no dispositive proof of any wrongdoing," what does it hurt to just show us? If the case is closed, then what on God's green earth is the rationale to continue suppressing these documents? And the reality is that their word is the best that we're going to get. That's it. Even Vance, in this clip, tries to paint Donald Trump as some white knight for releasing the files when he apparently could have killed the legislation. First off, he could not have killed the legislation. He literally ushered Lauren Boebert into the fucking Situation Room to get her to take her name off the discharge petition. The final vote in the House was 427-1. And also, he hasn't released the files. That law mandated all the files get released in December of 2025. It is July. So when Vance fillets Donald Trump for his courage here, he is ignoring the fact that Trump is currently, in real time, suppressing the files that they're taking credit for releasing. And it's not just Trump and Vance. Here's Todd Blanche making it abundantly clear that no one will face any accountability for their actions as it relates to Epstein.
You said this is the end of the Epstein, of your review of the Epstein files. So just to clarify, is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
I mean, you just baked in an assumption into your question that I have never said and I don't know to be true. Is the public going to learn about men that abuse these girls? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
Oh my God, dude. Like, men, what is this men you're speaking of abusing? You said they abused girls. What is that, like men or abuse? I don't even understand this concept that you're talking about. Fucking piece of shit.
Well, I mean, they're the men who abused the young women through Epstein's.
Look, we said in July, and it remains as true today as it was in July. If we had information, we meaning the Department of Justice, about men who abused women, we would prosecute them, right? We talked about the work that we're doing. That's why I said that. I said this earlier. There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether there are men out there that abuse these women.
Men that abuse these girls? Huh? What do you mean seen men that abuse these girls. How dare you bake in an assumption like that? Clearly, these girls were all abused by some elusive spirit. They were trafficked to no one, abused by no one, and have trauma from no one. How could you ask such a ridiculous question? Yes, how could we be so ridiculous to assume such a thing? You know what? I think we should probably ask these people how we could be so silly.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
You wondering why we're not hearing more about this Epstein case? I mean, the guy was only connected to just about every major player in the swamp internationally, and yet you don't hear much about it. And what the hell are they hiding with Jeffrey Epstein?
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. The island was an absolute cesspool.
But yeah, other than literally the entire MAGA movement calling for accountability, how could we possibly assume that there would be accountability? And look, because this White House is so shameless, they will continue to tell these lies. Here's Todd Blanche during his confirmation hearing just days ago.
I want to make sure the American people know that this administration, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, has been more transparent than any past administration, than Biden was or anybody else. And what we did is we complied with the law. And if we learn a new material, we will most certainly review it and make it available. When it comes to the victims of this horrible man, we will never not talk to victims.
Except they have yet to talk to, I think, maybe they've talked to a couple, maybe, but not a lot of them. So the thing that I wanted to zero in on in particular, let me find and see if he's got it in this video. JD Vance saying things like, oh, I'm an OG, I'm one of the OG conspiracy theorists on this, by golly, gee whiz. So the thing to notice about Vance in that interview, and I probably interview any interview where he's going on a podcast, which he likes to do, is that he will, I guess you could call it code switch, probably shouldn't call it that, but he will kind of alternate between, I'm just a brother just talking to my brother on a podcast. You know how we do. We just good old boys. We like to talk about stuff and keep it real. And then a minute later, he's like, can't help himself but brag about having access to literally any information that he wants. When Rogan asked him about that, he was like, what as vice president, what kind of access do you get? And he's just like, all of it. I see it all. I can see everything. Which great work. So let me see. Going to play this video clip, and as I apologize if it seems like my shit's running kind of slow right now. Is anybody else getting that on your end? You getting some choppy video or what? I hope not. It's pretty frustrating if so. All right, here we go. So some things stood out to me about the way JD Vance was trying to present himself when it came to the Epstein files in particular. Like, never mind the fact that he is the vice president, but he is the vice president. I should read off a couple of facts here to you guys that maybe aren't aware about Mr. Vance himself. Here we go. So yeah, Peter Thiel, friend and collaborator of the now dead Jeffrey Epstein, poured approximately $15 million into Protect Ohio Values, a super PAC supporting J.D. Vance's 2022 run for the U.S. Senate, making it one of the largest single contributions ever for a Senate campaign. Vice President J.D. Vance has repeatedly parroted Thiel's post-democratic, neo-monarchical, corporation-empowered ideology. And both men are explicit fans of the fucking moron, borderline Nazi Curtis Yarvin. So they have a lot in common, and it's pretty clear to me that J.D. Vance is doing the bidding of Peter Thiel. It's my estimation, and others as well that are smarter than me, that the reason J.D. Vance was chosen as vice president to run with Trump this time was, well, one, because he kind of tried to get his previous vice president killed, but other than that, because they needed basically the tech sector needed some assurances that they were going to get what they wanted out of a presidency, because this presidency, other than being openly disgustingly fascistic in a lot of its aims, is also just still pretty openly and explicitly some cases, but like not quite as much. Just it's a kleptocracy. They are just fucking looting. They were exploiting the power as much any way they possibly can, and that's why you see at the inauguration, the literal head of every billionaire of all the tech companies. They're all there, all there. It's pretty clear what the whole thing is that's going on with this administration, their connections, what they're trying to achieve, right? Nonetheless, J.D. Vance is he's the representative of tech interests in the administration, and that's the way it is. So let's go back to, I think it's 2023, 2024, I forget. On the Joe Rogan podcast, you had Peter Thiel. And, there's not a whole lot of videos and interviews with this guy out there. There's a few. Each one of them, I think, give away quite a bit. And this one in particular, especially now, knowing what we know. So I'm going to do a little bit of debunking here.
They're all the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theories, which I'm probably too fascinated by.
All the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theories, which I'm probably too fascinated by. Okay. So that's the same thing as what J.D. Vance is doing in his conversation with Joe Rogan, where he's saying, oh, I'm basically an expert on this, but they're trying to establish themselves as knowing a lot and having a lot of insight and understanding about Epstein, and yet distance themselves from it. Now, to be clear, I don't think that fucking J.D. Vance really had anything to do with Epstein. Maybe it turns out he did. I don't know, but I have not seen any evidence of that. I don't think that J.D. Vance did. I believe that he probably is just dealing with the aftermath of what his president and his handler, as in Peter Thiel, were up to. So he's just trying to navigate that without getting the backsplash on him, so to speak. So just notice that this is something they do, and keep an eye out for that. These types of people that, as I'm going to prove in a minute, Peter Thiel had many, many, many connections to Jeffrey Epstein. One in particular that's just, there's several of them that are undeniable. This is not theory. This is not just speculation. Like, these are documented things, but check this out.
Because it felt like there was some crazy stuff going on that they were able to cover up.
And still are.
Felt like there was some crazy stuff going on that they were able to cover up. So he's, at that point, these people that are in the know, they're wise enough to know that you can't just say there's nothing there. They know the people that are onto the scent, so to speak, are not going to give up if they just say, there's, it's done, it's over with. Even though Vance did try that, and I think that Thiel tries it in the same exact way in this. It's kind of wild. But so if you listen to Vance's interview the other day, he told Joe Rogan that all of the evidence that would have pointed to anybody else, really, it's all just gone. It basically kind of, something happened to it with that 2008 investigation, that prosecution, the Acosta one that was just like a sweetheart deal. JD Vance was trying to point everybody to that moment in time, and just to kind of get them to accept, they fucked up the whole thing. That any information we might have had, it's all gone from that point in the timeline, right? That's pretty clever. A little bit too bold of a move, I think. Honestly, if anybody's still on to the Epstein thing as something they care about, I don't think they're going to fall for that. Especially if you've already looked at the files that have been released. There's clearly information beyond 2008 that is relevant.
But then, man, doesn't the fact that we're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein tell us how hard it is to come up with anything else?
Doesn't the fact that we're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein, this was prior to any files being released, by the way, doesn't the fact that we're still talking about this just show that, that reveals a couple of things, I think. One, he just thinks it's silly that why are we even thinking about this? And two, they're unable to come up with anything else. What are you talking about? It's kind of like suggesting that the Epstein thing in itself was thrown out as that's just a way that they, capital T, they are trying to distract you or whatever, right? That's what that seems like to me. Am I still live, or is there people still here? It seems like chat froze. Remember, there's only 9 people watching. That's okay. So yeah, that's notable that he's trying to essentially downplay it while also acknowledging that there's some there. And then he goes on to say some more stuff that's pretty sus.
No, because there's no answers for the Jeffrey Epstein thing. There's been no consequences other than Ghislaine Maxwell going to jail and Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committing suicide, which I don't think he did. Mm-hmm. Other than that, what are the consequences? They were able to pull off this thing, some sort of operation. Who knows who was behind it? Who knows what was the motivation? But it clearly has something to do with compromising people.
Oh, speaking of compromising people, it's weird how I don't think I've seen Joe Rogan go at this quite that. Like, he's having one of his lucid moments in this episode. Of course, it was a couple of years ago now. As time has gone on, as he's gotten more CIA agents on his podcast, as he's had more billionaires on his podcasts and become buddies with the president and stuff, his brain has slowed down. He doesn't have as many lucid, kind of moments of like, wait a second, I feel like this is bullshit. And what's interesting here is that I think that it's kind of crazy because he's pushing back. He's already kind of arguing with him right here, right? I think that he's trying to impress Peter Thiel. That's what I think is motivating Joe Rogan to do this right now. That's just kind of speculation, but he's thinking, oh, if I can give him something to think about as far as the Epstein stuff that he hasn't thought about, or if I, point out this or whatever, he might think I'm pretty cool, or whatever, however his brain fucking works. I think that's what maybe was going on. And at the same time, he doesn't realize that Thiel's on the other side of the table trying to get him to go along with what he's saying. You can tell that's what's happening. I hate to do it's not really body language stuff. It's just more like social cues. And I know that's weird coming from somebody who's an autist, but as an autistic person, I have been I haven't been forced to, but I have made myself study social cues a lot. And I maybe know them better than a lot of people who are just, neurotypical, because I kind of had to in order to navigate life, I felt like. But check out how frustrated Peter Thiel gets. I mean, it's not super obvious, but you can tell there's some frustration there when he's like, man, it's just the fact that we're still talking about this. It's he's kind of frustrated. Rogan's not just going along with what he's saying.
But then, man, doesn't the fact that we're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein tell us,
well, hold on, let me back up a little bit more.
There was some crazy stuff going on that they were able to cover up.
And still are.
But then, man.
That right there, he kind of rolls his eyes a little bit. He's like, and of course it's hard to know for sure because he's an awkward fucking lizard person as it is. He just kind of seems to have a lot, for somebody that wants to have a lot of influence, he has a bizarre amount of moments where he's just struggling to speak English at all. And it doesn't come off as a stuttering thing necessarily. What I think, is just, once again, speculation, because who knows really the mind of a billionaire other than other billionaires. But I think that he's so used to getting his way that whenever something like this happens, and somebody like Joe Rogan, who in his mind is trying to, virtue signal essentially by saying, no, I've got opinions about this too, and kind of push back a little bit. And then he's like, man, you're supposed to just do what I say. You're supposed to just go along with what I say. I'm the rich one. Remember, I'm the investor in Spotify, which owns you, right? That's true, by the way. That is just true. Peter Thiel is a major investor in Spotify. Spotify infamously has a large ass deal with Joe Rogan and his podcast. I don't know. It kind of seems a little like there might be something. Am I saying anything's illegal there? No. What I'm saying is that you can't trust these conversations. You cannot trust these conversations, period. I know that you guys generally know that, but like, think about how wild it is that people that want to act like everything's a conspiracy, that there's, the Comet Ping Pong or whatever, that's real thing, right? But like, you can literally tie the financial interests of this guy with telling bullshit to the guy he's on the show of, and people don't want to believe that that's bullshit. I mean, I guess over time it has become clear that Rogan's been hemorrhaging some viewers, so maybe some section of his audience has recognized it. But so yeah, that's two things to note. There is that Peter Thiel and JD Vance both want to establish themselves as being kind of experts about this whole thing, but also they want to downplay it and just like basically get you to stop thinking about it as an active, ongoing thing. I don't know. I don't know if Peter Thiel had any dalliances, we'll say, with the more infamous and disgusting aspects of Epstein's shit. That's not really what I'm going to be getting into with this series, by the way. This is going to be another, kind of gross part of it. But let me reveal some facts to you here. So, you guys ever heard of Valor Ventures? Valor Ventures. Valor Ventures is it's a fucking hedge fund essentially. Let's see. Well, I'll start with this bit of information because this sets the tone right here. When Jeffrey Epstein died, his largest single asset that he possessed was a stake in Valor Ventures, which was launched and owned by Peter Thiel. That's another Lord of the Rings reference, by the way. Valor, the Valor spirits, immortal spirits. Bob, the old ways, can explain that better than I can. But it is and there's literal emails that we can see from the files where Epstein basically Thiel urged Epstein to invest in Valor Ventures, and eventually he did, to the total of about $40 million. Two $20 million investments Epstein put into this thing, right? And this is a company that generally backs startup tech stuff. So none of the stuff that they've been pretty successful apparently, but yeah. So one tangible outcome of Thiel's relationship with Epstein was a major financial deal. Epstein invested $40 million into Thiel's venture firm Valor Ventures in 2015 and 2016. Valor Ventures, which Thiel co-founded in 2010, specializes in fintech and startup investments. Epstein's contributions were split between two Valor-managed funds in 2015 and 2016, were kept secret from the public and even many within Thiel's circles until years later. This was a highly unusual move for Epstein. As the New York Times noted, Epstein rarely took passive investments in outside funds. But by that period, Epstein was attempting to rehabilitate his image and position himself as a money manager for the tech elite. Throwing money into a Peter Thiel fund gave Epstein financial footing in Silicon Valley's world. It also potentially bought him goodwill or further access into Thiel's network. The Valor investment was structured as a limited partner stake in the venture funds, meaning Epstein's estate would be entitled to the returns. And the returns there were. Those investments ballooned in value to about $170 million by 2025. In fact, Epstein's $40 million bet on Thiel's acumen became the single largest asset of Epstein's estate after his death. So, yeah, that $170 million, that was the largest single asset that he owned when he died. Yeah. So some of the companies that Valor has backed are TransferWise /Wise and Zero, as in zero with an X. I don't really know what those do. From Valor's perspective, Epstein's capital provided additional fuel for deals, though it is now a tainted legacy. So Valor Ventures spokesperson has said that he hopes that, you know, this can all be worked out and that eventually the victims are made whole and are able to move on, that's really nice sentiment, except the fact is the money is still liquid in Valor Ventures funds. And whenever eventually it is able to be released back to the estate of Epstein, it probably will go directly to his ex-girlfriend and 2 assistants, not to victims. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that in a better administration, a better federal government than what we have now, there would hopefully be people at work to try to make sure that money does go to the victims whenever it's eventually released, or to force the damn money to be released in the first place. I don't know how that works, but yeah. So the way that he talks about Epstein and this whole thing is just kind of, you know, it's kind of bizarre considering what I just told you, and that's not even the half of it. Let me tell you some more. By 2015, 2016, Peter Thiel and Epstein's relationship extended beyond finance and occasional dinners. It evolved into a line of communication about politics and mutual causes. In 2016, Thiel emerged as one of the very few Silicon Valley leaders openly backing Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Epstein, meanwhile, was cultivating contacts in Trump's orbit despite or because of his own controversial history with Trump. Emails from Epstein's files show that Thiel and Epstein were corresponding about the presidential race and other issues during this period. In April 2016, Thiel himself initiated a meetup asking, "What are you up to on Friday? Should we try for lunch?" Which, you know, and then they met at Thiel's office in New York, which indicates that Thiel, despite this being post the 2008 conviction, by the way, by a few years, it was out there. Everybody knew what Epstein was about by then, or at least the tip of the iceberg. And yet Peter Thiel was still comfortable enough having him at his offices to have a lunch meeting. So this, by the way, was about 2 weeks after the March 2016 trial verdict against Gawker, a lawsuit secretly funded by Peter Thiel as revenge for outing him years prior. This was the Hulk Hogan lawsuit, by the way, that, you know, when it was going on, people were like, "What? Who would fund this?" They're not going to win, basically. And I don't know if they did win, but they definitely, maybe they did, but they bankrupted Gawker with that. And the only way that, like, people were speculating on this back then, the only reason that somebody could do this is if they have so much money that it doesn't matter, because it's a lot of money to wage that kind of lawsuit against some media company. So that doesn't happen very often. But Peter Thiel was pissed, and he got what he wanted out of it, I think. So, but Epstein actually emailed Thiel, "I would have gladly shared your expenses for the Gawker suit," which is an extraordinary offer after Thiel's backing of Hulk Hogan's lawsuit. Yeah, so that's Epstein aligning himself with Thiel's vendetta against the media, which, you know, we can broadly kind of extrapolate that aligns with the overall MAGA impetus to avoid accountability at all costs. That if you are of a high enough social and really financial standing, then you should be immune to consequences to your actions. And anybody that tries to make you suffer any consequences for your actions, you just need to go at them. You know, this is the fucking Roy Cohn way of things. Just go at them. You know, fucking Darvo. For anybody that's not aware of what Darvo means, look it up. Yeah, so they were buddies, man. They talked quite a bit. Their relationship seemed to grow into a friendship from initially just being kind of interested in helping each other out financially to eventually Epstein essentially saw everybody that was of high enough profile as a potential someone to clean up his image after the conviction in 2008. So, you know, that's why it's not right to say, or it's not, let me try and think of the way to say this. It's not a good idea generally to just say that anybody that had anything going on with Epstein post 2008 was certainly part of any kind of pedophile ring or whatever. They might have been. I'm not saying that they get off the hook. Nobody should be off the hook. Everybody should be investigated. But Epstein has become clear, you know, to me, just looking into files and recent stuff that I've been looking at, he was very much in trying to rebrand himself by attaching himself to people of better repute, of a good social standing and whatnot, people who had generally had good, positive perception in the media. And so he was, as a predator does, trying to attach himself to people like that so that he could benefit from it. And to a certain degree, it might have worked. I don't know. But yeah, with all that in mind, all those connections in mind, I want you to just listen to how he speaks about this going forward here.
And Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committing suicide, which I don't think he did. Other than that, what are the consequences? They were able to pull off this thing, some sort of operation. Who knows who was behind it? Who knows what was the motivation? But it clearly has something to do with compromising people, which is an age-old strategy for getting people to do what you want them to do. You have things on them, you use those things as leverage, and then next thing you know, you've got people saying things that you want them to say, and it moves policy, changes things, you get things done. That they did that,
yes.
And and we know they did that, and yet no one is asking for the tapes, no one's asking for the client list. We're in the dark, still.
And probably, I don't know, man. I spent too much time thinking about all the Epstein variants.
Isn't that just like the same vibe as, I feel like it's the exact same strategy of JD Vance saying, boy, golly, I sure am the OG conspiracy theorist on this. And if, look, I just don't think there's anything there. I've looked into this. Believe me, I've looked at it. That's just more,
It probably the sex stuff is overdone and everything else.
Wow. Imagine that. First of all, imagine calling it sex stuff. Okay? Sex stuff. He's referring to, at this time, several instances of, is rape, child abuse, child assault, right? And he's just kind of like, the sex stuff, it's probably overdone. Holy shit, dude. Holy fucking shit. But that leads me to believe that he is trying. I don't have any direct evidence or any real reason to believe he did do anything to any children or sexual assault or anything like that to anybody. I haven't heard anything like that about Peter Thiel. But that right there makes me suspect. Because why would he try to deflect away from it and to downplay it and to point to something else? You know what I'm saying?
Is underdone. It's like a limited hangout. We get to talk about the crazy underage sex and
crazy underage sex. Wow.
And not about all the other questions. It's like when Alex Acosta testified for Labor Secretary.
And here, just like I said, the same thing JD Vance did, where he tried to point it back to that point in time. Essentially to try to cauterize any investigation into Epstein at 2008 in the timeline. They don't want anything past that being looked into.
He was the DA who prosecuted Epstein in 08, 09 and got him sort of the very light 13-month or whatever sentence. And it was South Florida DA or whatever he was. And Acosta was asked, why did he get off so easily? And under congressional testimony, when he was up for Labor Secretary 2017, it was he belonged to intelligence. That's
yeah.
And then and so it's the question isn't about the sex with the underage women. The question is
almost exactly everything that Vance had to say about the files is recycled. This, you guys hear it, right? Tell me if I'm crazy. Like. He's trying to point to the intelligence connections. He's trying to point away from the rich people of this country and point to the spy network of other countries, basically, or even our own spy network. They're trying to deflect from the money people with money.
Is really about why was he so protected? And then I went down all these rabbit holes. Was he working for the Israelis? Or
oh yeah, you went all these down. Did you happen to see JD Vance, because he was saying he went down all these rabbit holes too? I wonder if they encountered each other randomly in the rabbit hole somewhere, and we're like, oh hey man, you're here too. I haven't seen you since I funded your Senate race. No, you have, because you said you were going to tell me all the things I needed to say and not say on Joe Rogan. Oh wait, we're not supposed to talk about that. Got it.
Mossad or all this sort of stuff. And I've come to think that that's that was very secondary. It was obviously it was just the U.S. If you're working for Israel, you don't get protected. We had Jonathan Pollard; he went to jail for 25 years or whatever.
But unrelated, right?
Understood. But
this is one particular operation.
God damn it, Joe! He's trying to establish a fucking narrative here, man. Can you just shut up and say, yeah, that's true. I agree. God. Because like now he's going to have to wait a couple of years and send JD Vance on the show to do it.
It was if it was an intelligence operation, the question we should be asking is what part of the U.S. intelligence system was he working for? Was he working for
But don't you think that's an effective strategy for controlling politicians? Getting them involved in sex scandals? I mean, that's always been one of the worst things that can happen to a politician. Look at Monica
Lewinsky, the politician, right? She was a politician, right? Right? Was that what the... No? God damn. This shit's frustrating, man. It's frustrating because it's so clearly going on. The still attempted ongoing cover-up of this shit. But... By the way, here's another example of Peter Thiel's influence, and this actually seemed to work pretty well for him. Did you know that there is a certain live streamer that about 6 months ago or so, none of you had heard of? Then suddenly everybody had heard of him, and everybody was talking about him. Everybody was incorporating his lingo into everyday situations. He was on major news networks being interviewed for some reason. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Yeah. And then suddenly, just almost as quickly as he came, he was gone.
Get to know this 20-year-old look, smacks, or clavicular in the biblical sense. Why else would you randomly invite a 20-year-old streamer to your holiday party? Clavicular claims he's now blacklisted from future Thiel events after declining the invite and comparing Peter to Diddy. Presumably he'd heard what happened to Peter's ex, Jeff Thomas, after Peter separated Jeff from his friends and family.
So that's not the one that I expected to play, but let me find the one that I did plan to play. That gives a little tease of it, but it seems pretty clear that yes, he was initially propped up by, I'm talking about clavicular here, Peter Thiel.
Several of our whistleblower sources, Thiel is also personally invested in signal boosting friend of the show, Braden Clavicular Peters. This support and Clav's rapid viral rise makes total sense. Thiel has made a number of strange statements about the future of humanity.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions. He seems to have a vested interest in creating a post-humanist, technologically transformed future wherein real people like you and I cease to exist in our flesh form, instead living on as immortal creatures up in the cloud.
Yeah, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
This is not just like a Black Mirror style conspiracy fantasy. There is a race to create this kind of technology right now.
And all of this stems from, by the way, accelerationist ideology, right-wing accelerationism, a brand of it, I guess, as an extension of it. I've covered this a while back. I got kind of obsessed with the idea of accelerationism in general, and this is part of it. Curtis Yarvin, that essentially is, he's basically the first step. You could consider him like kind of the, how Marx said basically that socialism leads to communism. Basically, Yarvin is kind of like the kind of techno-feudalism that he advocates for is basically what they want to happen on the way to the true transhumanist epoch, where you well, not you because you're not rich, but where they transcend the human body and just live, I guess, in the cloud. I don't know. It's weird, man. It's fucking weird, especially for people that tend to focus on, hyper individual, bullshit, and it's like instead of collectivism, it's like literally the end result of what they're talking about is that everybody was just going to be part of the same matrix or whatever the fuck. I don't know. It's delusional, at least at the level we're at right now. With like, look, do I think it could happen someday where that's something that could happen? Maybe, yeah. Of all of the aspects of a human body, of all the elements of the human body, the brain is by far the least well understood in medical science. Consciousness being a large portion of that not understanding. What the fuck is consciousness? We still don't actually really know. You know, where does it come from? Why do some creatures have it? Why do we have it and others don't? What is it? Is it really giving us accurate appraisal of reality, or are we just kind of fucking deluding ourselves all the time? Who knows? Fact is, to think that we're anywhere close to being able to take our consciousness and put it into a machine, there's no fucking, it's so dumb. Yeah, I mean, transhumanism is cool in some context, but like with anything, you know, especially when it comes to technology, it's all in how you apply it, right? Like, you could say that, yeah, I don't know. In the same way that like me wearing glasses technically makes me a cyborg kind of thing. You know what I mean? Or having a hearing aid or having a prosthetic limb. Like that's kind of technically transhumanism. And sure, those things are great. And if we get to a point where we understand, we don't understand consciousness enough to, not even remotely, to think that we can just take it and put it in a machine. It just doesn't fucking work. It's so disconnected from reality that should disturb you quite a bit, that people like Peter Thiel have so much influence in everything, because that's the kind of delusional fucker. And that's not only that. It'd be one thing if that was just like a pet hobby of his that he liked to talk about or think about. His active stated goal is to drive us to this fucking singularity or whatever.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is now involved with a startup called Nectome, who plan to preserve and then upload his brain after death as a base model for what's called cyber immortality. And Google co-founder Larry Page recently declared that digital life is the natural and desirable step in cosmic evolution. So in this context, it makes sense that someone like Clavicular, who has already sterilized himself by injecting peptides into his nuts and asked questions like, what's the ROI on love, when asked about going on a date with a potential romantic partner, would be algorithmically pushed to impressionable pubescent American boys.
Yep. There you go. There's that. No, it really is true. Like, I mean, I think Ant had a video on this. I know Ant has a video on this on Elon Musk's complete lack of understanding of Blade Runner and Cyberpunk and like what the purpose of that media is. Wow, it's almost like we're seeing a pattern with these guys. Like, they just, when you're rich enough that your reality does not reflect anything like a common reality that anybody else is experiencing, it's like you just get to decide what means things, what things mean. And then, you know, if somebody disagrees with you, well, they don't matter because they're not rich enough to matter to disagree with you, kind of thing. And if you hear that people, if you like, I'm sorry, it's frustrating. I would take care of the clavicular hamster. I really would. I would take good care of it. Give me that clavicular hamster, clavicular. I don't know what we'd call them, but I think it'd be pretty cool. I would take good care of them. You know, I would do like I do with Gordy, and I would talk mad shit to him, but in a sweet voice. It's one of my favorite things to do with pets, is just to say really mean shit, but like say it in a really nice voice, so they don't know, they just know tone. So I'll sit there and I'll be petting Gordy, and he's just purring, and I'm like, you little piece of shit, you little piece of shit, yes he is, he's a little shithead. And Gordy's just like, love it. Yeah, I'm kind of weird sometimes, get over it. So this, you know, did not go the way that I wanted it to go as far as coverage, because I did not prepare well enough. You know what? So I'm just going to record some stuff. If you guys don't want to hang around for this, that's fine. I'm going to read from some script. All right. Just to make sure that I have it done here. So this is from my script on, I guess it's going to be a series, but it might be a video first and then like do a series kind of extrapolating on that video. I'm not sure. So this is how Steve Bannon, Peter Thiel, and Jeffrey Epstein astroturfed the culture war. Now, am I saying that in this that these three guys got into a room together and drew up the plans to create the culture war? No, not exactly. It seems like honestly that Peter Thiel and they all had interactions with each other. All that's documented, well known. But I don't know that they were all doing it in direct coordination. I think that Steve Bannon probably recognized very well what he was part of when he was working with Epstein and communicating with him on a regular basis. And I think he knew very well what he was doing, the things him and Thiel were talking about and what they were getting up to. I think all that was very intentional. If anybody is the more like in the literal terms of a conspiracy, somebody who was trying to create a conspiracy, it would have been Bannon. And then I think that the two, well, Epstein as well, but I think that they don't see it that way. They probably didn't see it that way. I think they just saw it as like, this is what you do when you have a lot of money, is you make things go your way. Right. So like, I don't know if they saw it as like the same way that Bannon did. Bannon, in my opinion, is probably just the most sinister motherfucker you could ever find. But yeah, so this is it's going to be a series that highlights a few things. I'll just read the intro and then we can go from there. The geopolitical landscape of the mid-2010s was profoundly reshaped by a highly coordinated convergence of technological innovation, behavioral data profiling, cultural subversion, and elite financial networks. Far from being a spontaneous working-class uprising, the populist wave that carried Donald Trump to the presidency in 2016 was synthetically cultivated, and as I intend to make my case in this series, it was cynically engineered by a handful of men with distinct backgrounds and perspectives, leading to the current socio-political and geopolitical landscape as we exist in this dark year of the year of our Dark Lord 2026. Much of this information has been laid out previously and expertly by career journalists. I'd wager that most people who are at all interested in the confluence of events leading to the U.S. dangling precariously on the edge of any shred of democracy will likely have seen this network on their own or by the work of other aforementioned journalists. I don't think this is an entirely novel claim to make. However, there is one aspect that I haven't seen laid out as specifically as I intend to. Much has been said following the release of some Epstein files regarding the infamous child rapist tentacles being found in some pretty bizarre, surprising places. One big example is in video game culture, both as a gamer himself and as a shady billionaire convinced of his brilliance, offering his profound and profoundly sinister advice to video game developers. His proximity to and documented coordination with Steve Bannon puts him at the genesis of the early 2010s anti-social movement online, Gamergate. Yes, those connections will also be laid out here. For those familiar with my own work prior to now and my interests in comic books, film, fandom culture, you won't be surprised to hear that the Gamergate offshoot, Comicsgate, which I've covered extensively on my own channel over the years, was also an inauthentic weaponizing of social grievances commonly known as culture war issues. At the center of this network was Steve Bannon, a media strategist who recognized that the digital grievances of isolated subcultures could be weaponized into electoral leverage. This operation was supported by the financial capital and surveillance apparatus of Peter Thiel and facilitated by the transactional elite network of Jeffrey Epstein. By analyzing the steps taken and methods used by each of these actors, this report maps how the anger of online subcultures was identified, cultivated, and mobilized into a mainstream political action. It details the transition from virtual economies of World of Warcraft to the coordinated harassment of Gamergate, the creation of hyper-targeted voter psychographics, and the co-opting of pop culture mediums like comic books. And then finally, it will outline how Jeffrey Epstein acted as a financial catalyst for Thiel's venture capital empire and an operational advisor to Bannon's international campaigns. And in the end, it should be clear that the will of these men is still very much represented today, embodied by the man currently in the vice president's office. And he has his eye on the presidency in 2028. So that's the intro. So you might have caught there that the lead that I'm bearing a little bit is, and the thing that I think will get the most attention considering my channel's history, my focus historically, is that, you know, I've always suspected Comicsgate was not organic. We know that Gamergate started as somewhat organic in the sense that, you know, you had some upset dudes that were acting based off of bad facts about people's dating lives and stuff, you know, things like that. But, you know, so I mean, I'm not giving any validity to Gamergate at all, even the very beginnings of it. But it was, as far as I and anybody else I've seen can tell, a few people that were actually mad. They got mad on the internet. Okay. Even if they're mad about something stupid and misogynistic and shit. But what happened after that, as is documented, has been confessed to by Steve Bannon, is it was co-opted. It was like many social movements throughout history. The people that stand to lose something, status quo, people that stand to be accountable for something, whatever, they're pretty clever at finding ways to undermine the efforts by whatever social movement. It's happened to lots of leftist movements. But in this case, what they did instead was, they saw that this would be a beneficial social movement to them. So they, Steve Bannon hired Milo Yiannopoulos to be, kind of cover the whole Gamergate thing. And Milo started intentionally validating Gamergate in articles on Breitbart. That was the intention, was to make them feel seen, make them feel that they can trust Breitbart, and to, go ahead and weaponize and aim this group of young, mostly white, mostly cis het men that were, they started to see you can actually make some stuff happen here. And to Bannon's eye, as we'll talk about probably, I guess, whenever I do the next entry of this, we're going to go into Bannon's history as a, real piece of shit. He's just such a piece of shit, guys. God damn, he's a piece of shit. Anyways, let me see how long that section is here. You know what? Maybe I'll just record it now. Okay. So, Bannon learning from his loss. The era of World of Warcraft gold farming, and then his entrance into Breitbart. The operational blueprint for the modern populist right was discovered within the virtual economy of the massive multiplayer online role-playing game, World of Warcraft. In 2005, Steve Bannon joined the board of Internet Gaming Entertainment, IGE, a Hong Kong-based company founded by digital entrepreneur Brock Pierce, a former child actor known for his role in the 1996 film First Kid. IGE sought to commercialize the real money trading market by establishing a secondary exchange where players could purchase virtual currency, weapons, and armor with real-world cash. Bannon, leveraging his background as a Goldman Sachs investment banker, secured a $60 million venture capital investment in IGE from his former employer. To harvest the virtual gold demanded by Western players, IGE established gold farms in China, employing hundreds of low-wage workers to play the game on continuous rotating shifts, essentially slave labor. The practice triggered a massive, spontaneous consumer revolt among the broader player base. Players viewed the presence of these professional gold-collecting avatars as a violation of the meritocratic rules of a game and disruption of its fantasy atmosphere. I think South Park even covered this in their episode about World of Warcraft. Operating without centralized leadership or a formal political ideology, players organized via message boards to coordinate a highly effective boycott, flooding Blizzard Entertainment with the complaints and filing lawsuits that ultimately forced IGE to sell its virtual marketplace and rebrand. So that right there, that was a big L for Bannon. It was a big L. But Bannon's not the kind of guy to take an L lying down. He's not the kind of guy to take an L and not, see a chance to learn something. Which, look, honestly, that's what I've said before. I think when you take an L, you should think of that L as you learned something. What do you learn from this L, right? L is for learning. Bannon learned. The collapse of IGE taught Bannon a profound lesson. He observed that decentralized, highly motivated, and digitally literate networks composed primarily of young, white males possessed a formidable capacity for technological coordination and collective action. Bannon realized that this demographic constituted an untapped political force that operated at a sub-Rosa level. Now, I want to point out here, too, that if the Democrats, what are you talking about, Democrat? Yeah, if the Democrats, if there had been any real representation of the working class, the common people, at this point we had Occupy Wall Street had started happening, I think. Yeah. If we had a government that if we had a party that at all truly represented the people first, instead of, this is before Citizens United too. You wouldn't have so many disaffected, easily manipulated young men like this. That's something I don't want to let ever slip under the radar whenever I talk about this kind of thing, because as true as it is, these motherfuckers are sinister and they cynically, evilly, co-opted a movement that was, pretty shitty and stupid anyway. But if at this point it had become, you know what, I didn't write this yet, so I'm going to have to write that and add it in later. Anybody still there? We still got some people here? No? Okay. Got another clip here I want to look at while I take a water break.
Derogatory towards trans people, men being derogatory towards women, white people being derogatory towards black people. All this kind of stuff is happening. So it's not being invented by Jeffrey Epstein. It's not being invented by his pedophile colleagues. It's not being invented by a secret elite society that then says, all right, now spread these messages, make the whole world transphobic. The whole world's already transphobic. What they end up doing with a lot of these things, whether it be 4chan or whether it be, Breitbart or testing grounds for a lot of these so-called culture war issues, is recognizing which ones are very effective at getting the most outrage online. Which ones get the most likes, the most clicks, the most shares, which stories or photos, right? If it starts in /poll, if it starts in 4chan, if it starts by, the creation of Moot, who did meet with Jeffrey Epstein, which times does it actually become very effective at getting people who otherwise wouldn't be talking about this issue? Again, less than 2% of the population is trans. This is not something that cis people were talking about on a regular basis. How do we get the everyday guy who is cis to start getting really mad about trans people, to start getting really angry about issues that don't concern him? How do we get thousands of Americans to talk about this and get really mad about this and dedicate time, money, effort, political power to start actually pushing on issues related to trans people when it doesn't affect them at all? What do we need to do to get that, again, well-to-do progressive or liberal mother to suddenly hate trans people? What do we got to do? What is the best strategy to make her think that this entire thing isn't about the human rights of a group that is being oppressed, but is actually about destroying the very idea of what a woman is?
Thank you, Lance, for laying that out. Very well. So the thing that's going to be, the any right wingers that happen upon this series as I go through it, one of the reactions I expect to get first and probably most is, oh yes, there's this big conspiracy to blah blah, and just reduce everything I'm saying down to the most cartoonish version of what I'm talking about, ignoring all evidence to support what I'm saying. But I don't think that they did this as like a shadowy cabal who, like, you know, I don't even know if they were even in coordination on an ongoing basis. I think that there were probably initial discussions about what they needed to do, the kind of, you know, things they needed to get behind and support and implement online, to see the chaos that they wanted to sow, to see the upheaval, the anger, the outrage, as you were saying there. They generally just knew, you know, what it was they needed to accomplish, and they had a general idea how to do it. And that's why you see some instances of this being very successful and others not. So, for example, somebody I mentioned just a few minutes ago that was right there, big name, right at the beginning of all this, right? And then suddenly, man, he kind of, his star stopped rising pretty quick. That was Milo Yiannopoulos. And I think that that's why you see him now whenever he pops up, and he's very clearly not doing well. He's got, you know, and this is not me shitting on him for this. I'm just saying this is a fact of, it seems like, of his life. He's got addiction issues. He's not able to maintain seemingly any kind of ongoing employment. I don't know how he gets money. But point is that I think whenever he comes up out of nowhere and starts lobbing, you know, accusations to the right, I think that's him expressing his bitterness and his resentment over having been discarded while he was such a, honestly, very important part of this whole thing that they've accomplished. And now, you know, so he sees it as like he maybe is owed something that he hasn't gotten. He's tried to, you know, do the same thing again, more or less, with, like, you know, supporting Kanye and all that stuff, and like it just hasn't worked out. But it's kind of crazy. You can imagine him thinking it would work out, though. If you imagine being Milo, which I don't know why you would imagine that for too long, but like, this is the guy who saw himself essentially at the center almost of what became the MAGA movement, and he can always, till the day he dies, look back at that and go, I really did that. I kind of did that. And, you know, cool. But he had to have seen the same thing, the same possibility when it came to, like, Kanye, right? And I got to admit, there's maybe 1 minute there when I was like, oh no, is Kanye, can he become oh no? Because, like, once Trump becomes president, you kind of have to consider everything, at least for a minute, as being possible. But yeah, no, thankfully it doesn't happen. So yeah, what I think is that just generally these guys, you know, the video he was just showed Jack Posobiec. He's another one, along with what's that other fucking guy's name? You know, they all saw, they all knew knew the script. They knew what they were hired to do, more or less, or they, not literally, but I mean, in some cases, yes, literally hired to do it. But in most cases, I think these influencers that you saw pop up within just a couple of years' time, that all were suddenly on brand, saying the same stuff. And then, of course, now fast forward to this year, you see Ashley St. Clair just coming out and saying what I think everybody's kind of generally knew must be the case, but we didn't have any evidence of it. She's like, yeah, they used to have these influencer chats where they get basically marching orders or what they're supposed to, the messages they're supposed to be on. And that comes straight from the top in many cases, from, you know, MAGA or people right around Trump. And that's how you end up with this shit. And it's like, I guess if anything, if I'm able to do anything with this series as I go on, and open to, you know, advice or questions or tips or concerns or whatever, open, I want to hear about it. Like, what if you're somebody that doesn't think that it's true that the MAGA ideology was cynically astroturfed and it is not like a real thing that would just occurred on its own. If you think I'm wrong about that, I guess tell me how. Tell me what facts I've presented that are not facts, kind of thing. And that's as I go along. I have not nearly laid out the entire case yet, but yeah, I mean, all of them are. And then, you know, some of them are still around, some of them not. I mean, we had a whole cycle of that presidency ended. A lot of people kind of fell off pretty hard. I can't even think of the ones I've forgotten. But then you had another cycle where you started to see newer ones. You know, I think Benny Johnson's been around for quite a while, but like, he didn't become one of the number one fucking inorganically large platform influencers until this term, I think. But yeah, they all. I'm certain some of them do believe the stuff they say. I'm sure some of them are drinking their own Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Just large enough sample size, that's going to happen. But I guess the main thing that I would want to try and accomplish with this series when it's done is I want you guys who are my regular audience and who have valued the stuff I've done about Comicsgate and stuff like that. I want you to be able to confidently say to a comic skater, your movement was started by Jeffrey Epstein, a pedophile. I want you to be able to say that to them and know that you're right. You know, that's it. It's all I ask. It's all I want out of this. I don't want money. I need money though. If you can donate to my GoFundMe, that'd be great. But that's not what the goal of this is. The goal is to literally arm people with the confidence to know that this shit is so inorganic. It's so insidiously propagated by bad actors that literally couldn't be worse actors. You know, it's the worst people. Well, he's not in the world anymore, but he was one of the worst people in the world. Has been directly responsible for creating the narratives, the attitudes, the gatekeeping, the hostility, the fucking, you know, yeah. So Comicsgate is a, you know, it's a pedophile movement. I think that explains, honestly, think about it. There's been several pedophiles busted within Comicsgate. I've talked about several of them. There's been a few notoriously. You know, there's like this one guy who had like thousands of CSAM images on his computer. And it's like, what the fuck? What? Yeah, it's a lot. Let's see what else we got. Oh yeah, I didn't finish this Bannon thing here. Okay, so when Bannon assumed control of Breitbart News, let me try it again. When Bannon assumed control of Breitbart News in 2012, his explicit objective was to track, coordinate, and radicalize this digital demographic. The opportunity arose in 2014, so he had 2 years there to really get a handle on who are the people that were responsible for, you know, who are these gamers that apparently you can, if you motivate them properly, you can get them to do things for you. Right? Or in that first case, it was against him. And I'm sure that motivated him a bit to get control of these same people. He wanted to get revenge by basically making them his pets, making them his, you know, monkeys on typewriters. So the opportunity arose in 2014 with the outbreak of Gamergate, a highly coordinated online harassment campaign targeting female game designers, critics, and progressive advocates in the video game industry. Gamergate originated in alternative web spaces like 4chan and Reddit, where participants utilized memes, doxing, and coordinated trolling to attack what they perceived as social justice warriors or progressive infiltration of their virtual sanctuary. To bridge the gap between these alternative forums and mainstream right-wing politics, Bannon hired Milo Yiannopoulos as a senior editor at Breitbart. Yiannopoulos wrote extensively about Gamergate, validating the gamer's sense of wounded entitlement and framing progressive demands for diversity as an existential threat to masculinity and gaming culture. And we still see that today. It's still very, very strong today. Maybe even stronger. Maybe it's kind of metastasized now. You know, it was kind of novel to see it at first and disturbing and alarming. You're like, oh my God, what? Your masculinity's threatened? What are you talking about? Anita Sarkeesian made a shitty video, so you're like worried that your dick's gonna get cut off? I don't get it. But now it's fully metastasized, and you see it. I mean, who's watching Smash JT videos other than people that fucking fell for this stuff, right? Like, that's who it is, and he is that's what's happening, what's playing out with the Mercante trial, the Mercante lawsuit rather, is his reality that it was built by this shit. Smash JT. I think he probably does believe a lot of the stuff that he's, maybe not everything he says, but I think the ideology that informs what he says and the lies that he says tells him that it's like the ends justify the means. I think that's how a lot of these guys operate. And so that fucking skewed reality that's not rooted in actual reality has come into contact with, direct clash with a person as dedicated to purveying truth and honesty and accountability and factuality in video game journalism as Alyssa Mercante. And that is what I think is playing out there. It's kind of interesting whenever you think about it that way, really. So by providing editorial legitimacy to Gamergate's grievances, Bannon constructed a political pipeline. This is the pipeline that a lot of people, love to be reductive about and say, oh, the pipeline, oh yeah. There's a literal pipeline. Well, not, okay, sorry, not literal, a figurative pipeline between gaming and far-right politics right here. This is where it starts. Of course, they've opened up other entries into the pipe since then. There's the comedy entry. There's the, of course, obviously, sports and stuff like that. Fucking UFC. But this was the one that was most successful early on. And this was the one that they've based everything on since. That's why you can't go to, for instance, a Facebook knitting group without seeing that they've either chosen to be MAGA or chosen to expel MAGA. Like, that's where we're at right now in the timeline, is that these confrontations arise out of necessity eventually, where you've got some element of MAGA in some group and then everybody else is not, and eventually those are going to have to be reconciled. And that's, part of the goal. It's part of the overall goal, to get people, divided. I mean, sure, they'd love if everybody just agreed with them and got on board their bullshit, but they know they're not. But they do know that enough people will get on board with it that it will eventually create a clash with everyone else. And that is the chaos. That is the discourse, the disrupted discourse that they are trying to achieve, because the only people that really benefits are dishonest actors, opportunists. Anybody that's trying to do something worthwhile for the American people, for anybody that's trying to think of the most vulnerable, marginalized people in society and how to get them protected and make sure that everybody's fed and whatever it is, those people do not benefit from a landscape that is full of people at each other's throats. The more chaos that they sow, the better it is for them, seemingly. Maybe. We'll find out, I suppose, a couple months, but yeah. So, constructed a political pipeline there. Isolated young men who entered the digital ecosystem out of a desire to defend video games were systematically exposed to a broader alt-right narratives, anti-establishment populism, and eventually the candidacy of Donald Trump. So before Trump was ever, even officially announced as a candidate, of course, I'm sure he was planning on it at that point. There were rumblings of it, but before that, you had a bunch of people that were building up in this new ecosystem that had been intentionally, artificially created by sowing outrage. Just kind of like you herd cows where you want them to go. This is what Bannon was doing, these people. And then right after he got a bunch of people into this little space, not even little space, it's a pretty big space, and they're looking for something to do. Like, they're angry. They think women are trying to take their balls. They think gay people are trying to make them gay. They think all the whatever crap they were thinking. They just needed someone to guide them. Choices always were a problem for you. What you need is someone strong to guide you, like me. That's Tool song. Lots of their channels were botted too. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't know. If it's almost impressive, but not really, because you would have to just be dishonest and intentionally deceiving a lot of people to make this happen. But in a weird, fucked up way, when you look at what Bannon accomplished here, it's kind of like, shit, dude. If only you'd spent that much time like taking a bath and taking care, doing some skin care treatment. You know what I'm saying, bro? Because you look like shit. I don't know. And then Bannon goes on to get convicted for scamming MAGA people, their supporters, out of a fake border wall thing that he didn't plan on actually having built. I think he got some millions of dollars from that, and then he actually got convicted of it. But then look who becomes president and starts giving out pardons again. Steve Bannon should be in fucking prison, man. This man should be rotting away in prison instead of rotting away on a podcast. It's fucking crazy. Do you guys see this shit? Because this was wild. Megan, this is from a while back. And look, these people are not on our side. But it's notable that they said this.
Is, what's core MAGA now?
I have no idea.
I think I know. Trump has said from the beginning...
Pedophile supporting Israeli lobby? I have no idea.
Need a different acronym. But Trump has said from the beginning that he defines what MAGA is. MAGA is what I say it is, he has said. And he's not wrong. It's his moniker. It's his campaign slogan. And all along, he's defined what is and is not MAGA. And he told me personally, MAGA will feel the way I want them to feel. I'll tell them how to feel about this, that, or the other thing. And they will. And he has been totally right on that. The problem for Trump now is that he has defined MAGA literally to those who agree with Mark Levin. If you don't agree with Mark Levin, you're not MAGA, which means you must be a neocon whose main issue is what's in the best interest of Israel. And that defines MAGA down to nothing. It's a nub. So what's that? It's not large. It's not important. It's not cool. It's not appealing to young people. It has no future. Much like Mark Levin himself, it's old.
No, much like Trump himself. That's the problem, is that Trump doesn't truly care. He can't possibly care that much. He's already gotten what he wanted out of MAGA. And I think on some level, maybe even is very aware of it. He doesn't have long, that's not a threat, FBI. Why would I do anything to harm this man whenever, look, time is happening. But yeah, that was what's his name? Sean Ryan is this guy's name. He's a big piece of shit, I think. Not super familiar with him, but I think he is pretty far right and shitty. But the thing he said at the beginning is just like jarring, man, because this is Megyn Kelly and she just kind of laughs it off, and then goes on the rant she goes on to, which, I mean, I guess I agree with what she's saying. It's just frustrating because, like, so many people knew this ahead of time. So many people could spot this 10 miles away. So many people knew that this guy, Trump, if any ideology that he claimed, that he purports to be, for, unless he's flat out saying, I only do things for my own benefit and whatever my whim it tells me would make me happy in the moment, that's the only way I would ever believe him about his goals. And it's pretty obvious. But to be like, oh, what does MAGA believe now? It's so little. There's nothing there, It's like there never was. There never was. There never fucking was. There never was. Got this video here. I think it kind of defines what MAGA always has been, really. Here you go.
Make America great and glorious again. I am tonight announcing
the biggest dumps. They call them dumps.
One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of
big, massive dumps.
Dripping out very quietly, dripping out. Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
Grab him by the pussy.
And look who it is. Yeah. I agree. I made that video while Biden was president, actually. It was while he was president, was after Trump had announced again that he was going to be running. And at that point, I wasn't very sure that we had a lot to worry about. I didn't really think that he was going to do so well. So, I not going to make that mistake again. Until that man is nothing but crusty orange dust in the ground, I will not underestimate the cult mentality. So I got one more video to look at here. It's like a video essay type thing or investigative thing. This one is, it's about Peter Thiel. And I think you guys can expect me to focus on him a lot going forward, by the way. The money aspect of politics, the financial, the economic aspect of politics is not something I've been confident with for a lot of my time on YouTube. I've been very confident talking about quote unquote culture war issues, sure. And I learned what I needed to learn about that, types of identities and people that I don't have personal experience with, so I could advocate for those things as best I can. And that's all been well and good. But more recently, I've been really focusing on bolstering my understanding of economic issues as much as I can. And that's where I'm at. So, but what that does is it leads me to the cross section of economic interests, and then how the culture war has been used to keep people from thinking about economic issues. That's the main thing that it's been used for. So yeah, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk to a degree, although, I don't know. Musk is weird, man, because I don't think he has a lot of the same shark kind of attitude that Thiel does. Thiel is somewhat self-aware enough to know that he shouldn't put himself out in front of everything. Musk got a little high on his own supply, I think, when it came to the election in 2024. So he was out there doing, silly jumps and and Nazi salutes. That should be the name of Musk's fucking biography one day, is silly jumps and Nazi salutes. Yeah, I like that. Anyway, but Musk is not someone that I found in researching this stuff. He's not, we all saw the interactions with with Epstein that he had. It was him not having this confidence that Peter Thiel clearly has. Musk is like like the little dog nipping at the big dog, just like wanting its attention. That's what Musk came off like in that those exchanges of emails. And Epstein, who was previously trying to get Musk to come to the island, once Musk started getting too into it, and he's like, well, wanting to make sure that everything's just the way, like saying the shit that you're not supposed to say and so on. Epstein was like, oh God, I can't fucking, yeah, we'll have you on. Sure, man. Okay, sorry, not this week. Thiel, on the other hand, and once again, I don't even see any evidence that Peter Thiel went to Epstein's island at all. I don't know if he did. There's some evidence out there in the files somewhere. Somebody let me know. But I think that the stuff that Thiel was up to is a little bit more societally driven than anything else. Whereas some people definitely just got to be cool with Epstein because they wanted to bang little kids. Gross. But also gross in a different way is people who got in with him because they each saw each other as a way to create a society that, number one, would never be able to do something as awful as out Peter Thiel again, or never be able to take his money away, or never be able to tell him what he can and can't do. And then in terms of Epstein, he's wanting to create a new type of society that would never be able to hold him accountable for the shit that he's been up to. Yeah. So here is this.
Been researching one of the weirdest stories that I've ever looked into. It's about a once fringe movement among the tech elite that aims to replace governments entirely with corporations. Privatized societies run by CEOs built for profit, not for people, almost like they wanted their own little worlds, playlands, built just for them based on their desires. I eventually pulled away from the story because it seemed a little more silly than anything to be concerned about. But then I realized they might already be getting their way. Just look at Doge and Palantir replacing or breaking the basics of the government, the plans for a futuristic, privatized new Gaza, AI infrastructure growth that seems immune to public opinion, and invasions of countries seemingly at random.
A new power structure in society that will overcome the existing democratic power structures. When billionaires suddenly have a tremendous amount of power and democracy has been proven to be exceedingly vulnerable.
So I decided to dig back in. What is this movement? Where did it come from? How did the people involved get so powerful? Where is it going? And importantly, what can we do to stop it? Let's go back to the weird origins of all this. In 2008, Peter Thiel first got involved in philanthropy, if you can call it that. He opened the Thiel Foundation, a nonprofit that invested in building the world Peter Thiel believed in. And one big investment sticks out: the Seasteading Institute. The Seasteading Institute was started by Patry Friedman, the grandson of Milton Friedman, the famous economist who gave politicians the academic backing to rip off the global working class. The goal of TSI was to build self-sustaining societies at sea, ruled by new governments on newly constructed land. This was particularly appealing to libertarians who wanted to escape the constraints of modern governance.
The question of whether seasteading is desirable or possible, in my mind, is not even relevant. It is absolutely necessary.
Peter Thiel provided the seed money for this project and set up TSI with some office space in a conference room in the Palantir office. He also hooked Friedman up with one of the co-founders, Joe Lonsdale.
You know, we're the guys who create institutions that are changing the world, and we've changed a lot of industries so far here in Silicon Valley, but we haven't been able to change the government. That's a pretty hard one.
Silicon Valley changing the government is exactly what Thiel wanted. I spoke with one of the people who's been following the rise of this movement better than anyone else, Gil Duran, journalist and author of The Nerd Reich, to get a better understanding of the philosophy behind all of this.
There's a long history of people seeking to escape democratic societies or else to bring back monarchy or authoritarianism. In 1997, there was a book that came out called The Sovereign Individual. It argued that in the 21st century, two technologies would result basically in the overthrow of democracy and the demise of nations like the United States. Cybercurrency, which we would call crypto today, and the other one was advanced automation that would create a world without jobs, and that wealthy individuals who were savvy investors could profit from this coming doom and prepare for it by making the right investments. This book had a major impact on Peter Thiel.
And of course, it influenced the people Thiel was paying. Joe Lonsdale got to work. He started a nonprofit, California Common Sense, allegedly dedicated to transparency in government spending, so that voters could make a difference if they found things they were unhappy with. On the surface, that sounds great, but two founders of that nonprofit started a for-profit, OpenGov. OpenGov is a software service for government agencies to manage data. The idea of replacing democratic processes in the hands of all of us with technology in the hands of few was becoming less fringe, and other nonprofits with similar goals started popping up.
But while the idea of using technology to make a decentralized country had some illustrious backers in the mid-2010s,
I'm going to leverage technology to create a new country. And yes, I did say country, not company.
it never really materialized on a serious level. But the think tanks would herald a few successful versions of their privatization plan.
Like Sandy Springs, Georgia, famously the first city in America to privatize nearly all government services. It was the darling of the libertarian press. Everything for profit, nothing public, and a consulting firm making a little cash off the taxpayers at every juncture. Those extra taxes for corporate profit started adding up, though. Eventually, Sandy Springs unprivatized, saving taxpayers millions of dollars a year.
There were also nascent communities focused on Christian values that the network state media heralds.
Battleground Washington, where a data center billionaire is buying up all the property to own the town, the mayor is on his payroll, and Highland Rim, a series of developments in Appalachia run by the investment firm New Founding. And that's not even including the California Forever Project, a proposed tech city in Solano County funded by Mark Andreessen, Reid Hoffman, Sam Altman, and other billionaires. But what if this was never really about these little mini-governments? Here's Peter Thiel saying the quiet part out loud in 2010.
Technology is this incredible alternative to politics, and the task in this world where politics has become so broken and so dysfunctional is to find a way to escape from it.
Tech instead of politics. We already had Doge and Palantir becoming the operating system of the United States, with a stated goal of being more powerful than the governments using it.
How can we help the government stop the bad guys while also putting systems in place to make sure nobody within the government was doing anything inappropriate? So you have to have systems that watch the watchers.
After leaving Palantir, Lonsdale, through his firm 8VC, continued investments in what's called GovTech, tech for
Why do you guys think they're so obsessed with escaping any kind of government, just like being able to rewrite society's rules and all that? Like, is it really just like they don't want to pay taxes, you think? Or what do you think it is? You know, like what would motivate these libertarians to be this way? I don't know, man. It's really difficult to get my head around why they are like this.
Thiel was paying. Joe Lonsdale got to work. He started a nonprofit, California Common Sense, allegedly dedicated to transparency in government spending, so that voters could make a difference if they found things they were unhappy with. On the surface, that sounds great, but two founders of that nonprofit started a for-profit, OpenGov.
A decentralized country had some illustrious backers.
The first city in America, taxpayers millions of dollars a year.
There are also nascent communities focused on Christian values that the network state media heralds.
Battleground Washington, where a data center billionaire is buying up all the property to own the town, the mayor is on his payroll, and Highland Rim, a series of developments in Appalachia run by the investment firm New Founding. And that's not even including the California Forever Project, a proposed tech city in Solano County funded by Mark Andreessen, Reid Hoffman, Sam Altman, and other billionaires. But what if this was never really about these little mini-governments? Here's Peter Thiel saying the quiet part out loud in 2010.
Technology is this incredible alternative to politics, and the task in this world where politics has become so broken and so dysfunctional is to find a way to escape from it.
Tech instead of politics. We already had Doge and Palantir becoming the operating system of the United States, with a stated goal of being more powerful than the governments using it.
How can we help the government stop the bad guys while also putting systems in place to make sure nobody within the government was doing anything inappropriate? So you have to have systems that watch the watchers.
After leaving Palantir, Lonsdale, through his firm 8VC, continued investments in what's called GovTech, tech for government clients. That's surveillance tech, AI drones, AI weapons, even tech to replace 911 with AI. All aim to replace, privatize, and profit from tasks normally attributed to democratically accountable officials.
What's happening now, though, is that the companies are becoming more powerful than the governments they serve. We suddenly have all these billionaire oligarchs spending so much money, they were able to actually capture the federal government with Trump. So it's this interesting moment now where we're getting a glimpse of what government by technology company would look like.
And Lonsdale is working to convince you that we need this by making you scared. Lonsdale founded the Cicero Institute, a think tank that pushes anti-homeless messaging. Not anti-homelessness messaging, but messaging attacking the homeless themselves. And even legislation creating concentration camps where unhoused people would do forced labor.
You actually can go into states, you can partner with governors, you can pass laws. Cicero's in 15 states, we're getting dozens of laws passed, and then we're gonna teach people that and go to the national level.
Riling people up is definitely part of their game plan. That's what we saw in the San Francisco recalls. San Francisco had a spike in crime during the pandemic, but so did almost every big city in the United States. Only in San Francisco, which has extremely low crime rates compared to most cities in red states, did they create this massive panic using social media and doom influencers to convince everybody that everything was worse than it had ever been.
And as Lonsdale got into nonprofits and think tanks, Patrice Friedman, remember him, Milton Friedman's grandson, started his own VC firm with backing from Peter Thiel, called Pronomos Capital, existing entirely for investing in privatized governments. In Honduras, Pronomos invested in the first government run entirely by a for-profit corporation, Prospera.
Prospera is this little enclave on the island of Roatan in Honduras that claims to be its own little charter city that was funded by American venture capitalists and has been touted as the flagship project of the network state movement.
But the real flagship project is something bigger: the entire United States government. It shows in policy. Remember the whole thing about taking over Greenland? That idea emerged and was celebrated by the people we've been talking about.
I think having a frontier is very healthy. I think part of America being great is that it's growing and creating more wealth for everyone. If the people in Greenland want to be part of us, if we can use those resources better and make sure Russia and China don't get advantages in the Arctic.
The Freedom City as a name didn't really gain momentum, but the idea is there. And the influence in the administration is clear. Joe Lonsdale helped staff up the Trump administration, and just recently accompanied administration officials to the Philippines to christen a new regulatory zone.
Just last week, we signed a historic deal with the Philippines, 4,000 acres, right next to Subic Bay, where we're going to build a first-of-its-kind AI-native industrial park.
But I was there for a day in the Philippines with everyone. They're excited what you guys are doing.
That sounds a lot like a startup city. They've also embedded themselves with the rest of the right-wing movement.
I could not have envisioned that J.D. Vance, a Peter Thiel protege, would be the vice president of the United States. And so when Vance got onto the ticket, then it became real that this stuff could travel to the White House. In September 2024, there was a conference at Fort Mason in San Francisco called Reboot 2024. And its website announced that we were now in a new reality and that Silicon Valley was waking up and about to become this powerful force in politics. And the guest speaker was Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation, who is the guy who had shepherded Project 2025. So here you had tech VCs in San Francisco and Kevin Roberts in the same venue proclaiming the new reality. And the new reality is where we are today.
And that's showing in actual policy, like the administration's quietly announced plans for maritime prosperity zones, districts on American soil with fewer regulations for corporations to build ships and reinvigorate the industrial base. Then there's the New American Industrial Alliance, a tech industry interest group, pushing for unrestricted data center growth. They were listed as co-sponsors of the Blueprint for America, lobbying for prosperity zones on American soil, a plan to sell federal and public land to private companies to build low-regulation, low-tax havens for progress. Their co-sponsor on the blueprint was the company behind Prospera in Honduras, whose lobbying disclosures show they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars pushing for prosperity zones. But they also spent big on begging the American government for handouts of your money. They've lobbied on refunding the U.S. International Development Financial Corporation, a government organization run by Epstein associate Ben Black, that uses tax dollars to invest in American companies abroad. That's privatized foreign aid. And they might finally get their way.
Black went to Honduras and promised investment in real estate and technology there, including an investment in La Ceiba, which is slated to be absorbed by Prospera.
But it's more than just government handouts. It's war crimes.
So we did a master plan, and we've developed ways to redevelop Gaza. Gaza, as President Trump's been saying, has amazing potential, and this is for the people of Gaza. We've developed it into zones.
It was sort of insane to see it all come together in this way. But again, wherever you look these days with Trump or with these tech guys, there's always the idea of a new city that they're proposing. And it's not clear why we need these new cities. You know, Gaza should be rebuilt for the Palestinians, but these guys see it as an opportunity to take the land. And so that shows you the degree to which this thinking is starting to imbue everything that they do.
Look at how the people in this fringe movement reacted to other invasions. In 2019, Mark Lutter, leader of a Peter Thiel-funded New City think tank, said that overthrowing the Venezuelan government would be an opportunity for these projects. And when the invasion did happen, Lutter suggested America establish a Florida or Texas-style government there. He cites America paying for a wholesale development plan after regime change, which is exactly what we're doing in Iran today, to the tune of $300 billion. Palmer Luckey, Lonsdale and Thiel associate and founder of AI defense contractor Anduril, pictured here in cosplay, suggested a privatized city on Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which President Trump also threatened with invasion.
Again, nobody wants this. They know that. That's why they hate populism. That's why they hate democratic representation, despite all of this being couched in freedom.
What they're asking for is to exit entirely from any government structure. But that's just not how it works, especially when most of these guys are government contractors and are still wanting to have the benefits of our society without having the responsibilities of our society.
These are people who don't like being told no. They're angry at the pushback against data centers, that we don't want AI to take over everything, that no one supports annihilating a civilization to replace it with one they can profit from.
People need to understand that the billionaires have become radicalized against democracy, and they're in the process of using everything they have to try to destroy it. And that's the battle of our moment. That's the battle of our time.
I think that is true. I've said before that, and I was only partially right. I said before that fascism is it's the thing we've got to fight against in our time, in our lifetime, and it is, but it's not as simple as fascists are just the right wingers who are angry and want to control everything. It's that, but it's also at its core, it's wealth, absurd, obscene wealth, and the ideologies that underpin that. So they're talking about, the guy was just saying that they want to make this happen against the wishes of everybody else. They have a word for this, and I've talked about it before. Going back to accelerationism. Hyperstition, as in superstition, but it's a newer word that was created by Nick Land, who's an insane person. So hyperstition is a self-fulfilling idea that becomes real through its own existence. The price of Bitcoin, Rocco's baseless, accelerationism, and the QAnon conspiracy theory have been described as hyperstitions. Self-fulfilling prophecies are a kind of hyperstition where predictions are made about the future that become true by being known. The concept was coined by Nick Land in 1985 as a portmanteau of hyper and superstition, during his time at the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit developing the philosophy of accelerationism. Cybernetic Culture Research Unit was formed in late 1995 and played a prominent role in developing the philosophy of accelerationism and hyperstition. It was initially described by Nick Land in 1995 issue of Catacomic as being an element of effective culture that makes itself real through fictional qualities, functional as a time-traveling device. Land wrote that hyperstition operated as a coincidence intensifier, affecting call to the old ones, referring to the omniscient deities from the Lovecraftian Cthulhu mythos. Trying to think of another one. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy is the way to go. I mean, it's more that this version of it is more that if you knowingly do this thing or talk about this thing, it will bring about the thing. In other words, it's kind of just, in a way, it's also just an evolution of The Secret. That book that was going around like the 2000s or whatever that some people got into. I had a girlfriend that got into it. It's kind of weird. That like if you just think positively about the thing that you want, it'll manifest itself. And there's some truth in that if you focus on a goal and you really focus on it and you actually take the steps necessary to achieve that goal, and that goal is realistic and the steps you take are realistic and consistent. I mean, in some cases, you were actually able to achieve that goal. The difference is when we're talking about billionaires and they've decided that they want to see a different reality happen, they can make that happen, or at least try to, and they've gotten pretty fucking far with it at this point. But like as they were just saying, they're sitting here wanting to have these new disconnected societies or whatever, but they're also wanting to continue to benefit from the, so what they're trying to do is change society without most people being aware of it, or at least without most people being able to do anything to stop it, because they really want to just change this society into the one that they want. And then they also probably want to have just a backup plan, like a little island, or we can escape to Venezuela or whatever the fuck, whenever things don't go well with the new kind of a theocratic / technocratic. Yeah, it's insane, is what it is. The only thing that is sure to come of this is lots of death and misery, and yeah, chaos. That's it. So I didn't realize until reading this just now that God damn it. So hyperstitions have been characterized by Harrison Fluss and Landon Frim as the view that our chosen beliefs about the future, however fanciful, can retroactively form and shape our present realities. Benjamin Noyes has noted Terminator and its use of time travel paradoxes as being influential to the concept. The mechanism of hyperstitions have been characterized as a feedback loop. Fluss and Frim, that sounds like fake names, I'm sorry, state that the left-wing perspective rejects preemptive knowledge of what a humane or advanced civilization may look like, instead viewing future progress as wholly open and a matter of free choice. I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess, like, you'd be hard-pressed to find a leftist who doesn't think that the Star Trek, for example, that the future of Star Trek is a pretty good model, it seems like. But I don't think that if we could just snap our fingers and go to Star Trek world and make that be the way things are, that we should do that. I think that in any kind of like fundamental shift in the way society is, that needs to come about just by nature, by inherently gradually, because you can't trying to, and this is what the problem I've had with like a lot of the leftist, quote unquote leftists online, tankies and shit, who think that nothing is good enough. It doesn't matter what kind of progressive candidate you get in office, none of it matters unless we just basically get rid of this, United States as it is, and start over with a new blah blah, revolutionary types. The number of people that would just simply die immediately is staggering. And if they're okay with that, that's fine. Just say that. I don't like whenever they pretend like tankies. I mean, that their ideology and their ideal outcome would be the best thing for everybody. It would maybe be the best thing for some people eventually, but in the interim, no, it would be terrible for most people, especially the most vulnerable people in society. A lot of those people just die. And that, yeah, tankies need to fucking accept that and own it. You know what I'm saying? But point being that it doesn't matter what direction on the political scale you're going. Upending the status quo in a short amount of time is certain to lead to chaos, misery, death at an unimaginable scale. I'm talking bodies piled up on the sides of roads and shit. It would be pretty horrific. Yeah, I don't think that that's a realistic or even a healthy perspective to have on how to change society, despite it coming from, in many cases, valid feelings of anger and frustration with the way society is, valid feelings of being left out of society and the benefits of living in the country and whatnot, whatever country you're in. Those are all valid things to feel, and I wouldn't take that away from anybody. I would never say that you're wrong to feel this way or whatever, but to then immediately resort to, and if we're talking about on the left, I tend to have maybe not sympathy, but I do understand where they're coming from. Whereas these right-wing billionaire types, man, they just their shit isn't coming from a place of actual sincere, like aggrievement, right? They've gotten everything they wanted, and now they just want more. They have everything in life that they could possibly want and need, and then also they want to go and just go and take the rest of it. You know what I mean? They want all that shit, and that is truly vile entitlement. It's hard to imagine, but that's what it is. Anyway, we're at 2 hours 5 minutes. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here. Well, you guys are lovely. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I think we might be doing a showcast tomorrow. I'm not sure. Did I have something else to look at real quick? I think so. Check. Excuse me. Oh, yeah. This was what I want to look at because it's fucking hilarious. Look at this shit, man. I know you guys have probably already seen it by now, but like, yay. Hey, take. Yay.
Come over here by me. Let's go. Come over here by me.
Oh man, what is this dude wearing too? By the way, like, look, I know that he is definitely essentially a pimp in the worst sense of the word, and an abusive child, apparently, exploiter and trafficker, sex trafficker and stuff. So I mean, there's really, those are the things that matter about describing this guy, but also he's terrible at dressing himself. He's terrible at thinking that he's dressing himself in a way that like appeals to anybody except for insecure young boys who don't have any idea what their taste is yet. They're just looking to other people. They see him and they're like, oh, that must be what men dress like. And look, I'm not saying you can dress however you want as a man, as a woman, as whatever. Dress however you want. It's just in the context of everything this guy says and purports to believe and stuff, it's just funny. It's really funny that his pants are tighter than, I don't know, ballet dancers, and he had these little fucking little slippers on. It looked like these little slippers, and I think he was out and about. I think this is just like what he wears. It's weird. Show me the slippers again. Where are the slippers at? God damn it. Fuck Andrew Tate. Fuck these Tates, man. Fuck them all. Fuck them to death. I don't care. Hope they rot. Romanian prison or wherever the fuck they're going. I hope they rot there. And here is obviously you need to accurate. Oh, by the way, something about Peter Thiel I meant to mention, and I didn't put it in the actual folder that I needed to. Do you guys know, is anybody familiar with the kind of commentator, live streamer, I guess, YouTube guy that used to be around a lot more, but he hasn't been for quite some time? He was used to be a neuroscience researcher, and he was an alt-right dude named Jean-Francois Guérepi. Canadian guy. Far-right political commentator. Is anybody familiar with that? Remember that guy at all? I used to catch him on live streams or videos from like what was it? Old TJ Kirk streams and stuff like that, right? He would just in and around that orbit. This guy. More recently, and this is the last time I'd heard anything of him until pretty recently, his wife, who apparently has some kind of developmental or learning disabilities or something like that. Maybe she's just autism. I'm not sure what the actual thing is because I saw a lot of people just saying that she was R-word. I don't know if that's what, I don't know. She disappeared at some point. And the joke became, I thought it was a joke at first, that he had done something to disappear her. And then he didn't seem like he was trying too hard to find her and so on and so forth. And as far as I know, I don't think she's been found yet. And I don't know. Let's see. Okay, his long-term partner, it wasn't his wife, Mama JF, as they called her, Elora Patoini. She disappeared in June 2023 after last being seen in Moncton, New Brunswick. Garepi claimed that he did not report her missing right away, claiming she left voluntarily to live off the grid and travel without her phone or credit cards, stating he believes she chose isolation. Wow. In the police investigation, investigator disappearance and the public concern grew as commentators and online true crime communities treated his account with skepticism. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to look into this more off stream because like this seems like another rabbit hole to get caught up on this shit, but like wow, crazy. Okay. Point being, what I was trying to get to with this before I go is that this guy was also propped up by Peter Thiel. That's in the files. He was some degree funded or influenced or directed by Peter Thiel. So there you go. Fun stuff. And on that note, peace out.
Let's shoot protesters in the leg. I want to invoke the Insurrection Act. Let's do that. Let's do another 7 wars. I love wars. Let's bomb more people. Let's steal all the oil and the gold from Venezuela. I love that. Let's carpet bomb a girls' school in Iran. Let's do 17 different massively corrupt schemes where I rob the American people. Let's do all that.